If you've ever looked up ways to quit your 9 to 5 and travel, and especially if you're a teacher and you're wondering, can I actually make a full-time living working remotely and quit my job to travel the world? And can being a travel agent actually help me do that? Is that even still a thing? Well, it is exactly what I did, but I just want to give you a preview and tell you this is not going to be one of those videos where I say, I quit my job, I made oodles of money, and we lived happily ever after, because that's not what happened. But I will tell you the real story of why I quit teaching and how I was able to take my travel business full time. Let's get into it. Hi, by the way, in case you've stumbled across this video or my channel, my name is Brittany. I am the founder of Travel Agent Haven. I've been working officially in the travel industry since 2017, became a travel agent in 2020, and I think you'll see from this video that my journey with travel and remote work started long before that. I can't wait to dive in with you. Basically, the reason I wanted to record this video is because in this world of marketing and sales and seeing coaches and YouTubers, it is so easy to fall into the trap of thinking that everybody has this fast success story and that the hockey stick just keeps going up and up and up. Things always get better and we all live happily ever after. But that's not true, and everybody's story is so different and unique, and I hope that this video can bring some encouragement to you if you feel like things should be easier and you should be further along than you are now. Two, I hope it brings you some motivation to get to where you want to be so that you can go to that next milestone of yours, whether it's joining the Comma Club and earning your first 4-figure commission check, or maybe even meeting and matching the salary you have of your job, or maybe even just making your first commission if you're brand new. And if you aren't a travel agent yet, I just want to draw some attention to the Pack Your Passport podcast playlist that I have both here on YouTube and available on Spotify and other podcast platforms by now for sure, because that is specifically for people thinking about travel agents. Because I know that in this video, I'm going to have both people who either are travel agents already and they're wondering, okay, is all this work and time worth it? Am I actually going to be able to make enough to eventually leave my full-time job and match my salary? And it's for those people thinking about getting into the travel business, becoming travel agents, wondering, is this going to be worth my time? It's the same question either way. So let's get into the backstory. Being a travel agent wasn't exactly what I thought I was going to do when I first started my own journey in travel. When I was in my 20s, I actually did several seasonal jobs. I actually knew from a very young age that I did not want to go do some normal 9 to 5 job and have a life where I just got up early, went to work, came home, watched TV, went to bed, got up, and did it all over again. I knew very early on that was not for me. In fact, right after I graduated high school, I did not go to a 4-year university like so many others do. I did go to a community college and I learned some things there, but my real education started when I got my first full-time job at a hotel. And I don't even really think of that as my first full-time job, in quotes. It really still felt like a young person's job because it was fun, exciting. I got to meet new people every day. I was getting to travel to other places, other locations where the hotel company owned properties. So it was really interesting and different, and it didn't feel like a normal office job. It still isn't. I ended up working so many other seasonal jobs, including working at a summer camp on the North Shore of Oahu in Hawaii, working at a summer camp in Southern California right next to the Pacific Crest Trail if we have any thru hikers here, working at a different summer camp in Northern Arizona, which is where I ended up living for a few years afterward. And I also worked randomly, but not so random because I'm actually really into farming and food sovereignty and all that stuff. I don't really talk about that on this channel, but I actually do have a whole self-sustaining system here in my backyard. And if you're curious about that, I'm sure I'll have another YouTube channel where I talk through my journey there because it's a big part of why I do this, but more about that later. So yeah, in that flower farm job, I also sold at farmers markets in Washington, D.C., DuPont Circle. So that's kind of a fun fact. I've had a very wide breadth of experience, and I knew that even as I got older, I didn't want for all that variety and the meeting new people and the going to new places to stop. I knew it was going to shift and change as I grew up, but I still wanted a non-traditional life. In fact, my now husband and I actually met at one of those summer camps. We met at the summer camp in Southern California. That was actually the same summer camp that I went to during summers growing up, so that was always a special place. And he was doing the same thing. I was going to school for parks, recreation, and tourism management because when I eventually did get to a university, I said, okay, I'm not doing a normal 9 to 5 job. I will learn the business skills and all of that, but I really want to be outside. I want to be always exploring exploring new places, learning new languages, meeting new people, etc. And he knew he also wanted to be outside. And it's funny because you can see now how what we do is related to what we studied and what we were interested in, even though it's not exactly the same now. So he studied forestry, now he works in mining, which is a whole other conversation, but man, you need people who care about conservation in the environment working in those industries. I studied parks, recreation, and tourism management. I'm now a travel agent who hosts trips, so it's all connected. So we eventually went to university. We were still dating for a while there. We graduated, and then we had this moment where we were like, okay, maybe we do actually have to get quote unquote real adult jobs and actually get an apartment and things. We actually moved in with my sister in Phoenix. That's a whole journey in itself. I don't think we made it even 4 years before we realized we definitely wanted something different. And there were 2 big events that happened that really confirmed that for me. The first being probably one of the highest highs I ever had. It was my first time traveling outside of the country. My sister sent me a text message and was saying, hey, you need to look up photos of Norway. It is the most beautiful place I have ever seen. And let me just paint a real quick picture for you. This was back when social media was not in its heyday like it is now. Instagram was just barely coming into its own in like 2015. It was just such a different world than it is now. We all lived in person and then we went online. Like it was a place to go. Now we live online. Social media is the town square, and it's almost weird to say, but what we do offline kind of supports that. So strange. So very different time for booking and planning travel. She sent me the place. I said, okay, let's do it. She found this amazing airfare. It was like $400. Does anyone remember Wow Air? It was back in those good old days where you could find like $300, $400, $500 flights from Los Angeles direct to Oslo, Norway. There are still some good deals with Norse and other airlines, but it was just amazing. What a time. So I remember at the time I had been working at my job then in Phoenix, working at a community center where I was still designing experiences. I was using my recreation degree, but I was getting to the point where I was feeling pretty done. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. Really loved the organization. It was aligned with my faith. I'm a Christian. My husband and I felt like it was a step in the right direction because we thought eventually we might like to both work at a summer camp / outdoor school ministry, bring all of our experience into that. It's so funny to think that now, because now I would never do that, but that was what we wanted at the time. And we thought this was a step in the right direction towards that, as he was doing other seasonal work still leading up to that. So we went on that trip, my sister and I. She and I actually have a separate travel blog and brand together called Two Broads Go Abroad. If you're curious about that, I'll be sure to put the image up on the screen, but you can just go to twobroadsgoabroad.com if you're curious about that. You can also find us on Instagram. It's fun. It's about best friends traveling together, which I think is a really unique way to niche down. And we actually do offer itinerary planning services. So by the way, that is something you can totally do. Whether you're already a travel agent or you're thinking about becoming one, you can add on itinerary planning to that. And if you like that part of the trip planning process, especially if you're already a travel agent because you're already doing that, you can get paid for that too. We get paid between $250 and $500 on the high end for planning itineraries. And if you're just getting started, you can start by asking $25 to $50. It's very reasonable. And you could even start on a website like Fiverr or Upwork. This isn't a video about selling itinerary planning services. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments. I'll think about making one, but that's another option for you as you round out your offers for your travel business. Okay, so we went on this trip, and while on the trip, I actually remember there were a couple of moments. One is when we were on a train. We were going through this beautiful fjord country, and we looked at each other and we just said, this is what we're meant to be doing. Me and her are not meant to just work in an office with fluorescent lighting all day, miserable with our lives, feeling unfulfilled, waiting and wishing for a trip in the future. And I even remember when I requested the time off, quote unquote, I had been working so much, I was actually scared to ask for time off because I was a department head. I couldn't exactly be gone that long. I actually bought the plane ticket first, and then I didn't even request a time off. I informed them that I wouldn't be coming. So that was a whole trip and a journey in itself. But it's funny how when you do it once, it just becomes so much easier to do it in the future, because now I could not imagine going in and having a boss tell me when I can go to the bathroom, which we'll get to teaching in a minute, and when I can take a vacation. Now, never could. So that experience was super transformative to me. That was my first trip abroad. The place was beautiful. We went through Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and it was followed by one of the lowest lows ever. I was not raised by either of my parents. I was raised by my grandmother. That is a long story, but my grandma was everything. She had actually raised my adopted sister, the one that I had just gone on that trip with. Weeks later, had found out my grandmother had passed away. So we both lost our grandmother weeks after the most epic trip of our lives that showed us how much possibility there is in the world. And between those two events and the burnout and exhaustion that I was already feeling, added to the fact that from when I was young, I knew I did not want a traditional job and had somehow found my way here, I came to my husband and said, okay, we need a change. And within months, I had made changes. I knew that I did not want to move through life without being close to my parents. I know we only have so many Christmases, Easters, birthdays, family vacations together, and that's assuming everybody lives long, healthy lives before everybody passes and you miss them. I already felt like I had sacrificed so much time in my grandma's last days and years. I don't want to do that again with my mom, with my sisters. I want to prioritize family and actually being around for them, which is ironic when you look at my story because I spend so much time traveling, but I really do prioritize my relationships with people and being there for things, right? Being there for events because you don't know how much time you have on this earth. And that's another reason I love traveling and living like there won't be another year because you don't know when there will be. And I know that can sound morbid, but it's a positive outlook for me because I think we're going to live every single day to the absolute fullest. Okay, I started looking for other jobs and I ended up finding a job where my biological mom lives very close to her on a reservation, which is another novel in itself, as a teacher. And I had actually been working very closely with teachers in the job that I had at the community center. We worked with schools, we did summer day camps, right? So I work with teachers all the time. And I thought, okay, this could be it. I love working with kids. I've already been working with kids for years. I was already open to working at a summer camp. This is very similar kinds of work as far as being active and running around, but also balancing that with admin. But it was just a different setup. Okay. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to be a teacher. And within 7 weeks, I did a lot. I enrolled in an alternative certification program, which meant I was allowed to teach and pursue my certification at the same time. I know people have feelings on that. This video is not about that, but I'm really grateful for that program because it allowed me to make a full-time income while I was pursuing the certificate. And it was good for the district because they have such a hard time hiring and retaining teachers on a reservation that it was like a win for everybody. By the way, if you're curious about that, you should definitely check the links in the video description because I also have a website that's all about living and teaching on a reservation if you're curious about that. So that was a trip in itself, but there were some things I really loved about teaching that I also didn't get working at my previous job. I loved working with kids and being active every day and being creative and thinking on my feet. I really thrive in that environment. I also loved having weekends off because I did not have that working in hotels, working seasonal jobs, and working at the community center. I also loved having a more family-friendly schedule of knowing the exact same time I was going to come in every day and leave at night. Now, it doesn't mean that I always worked family-friendly hours as in only 8 hours a day, but I at least knew when I was starting and ending my shift, and that was really helpful to me. But there's still a problem of money and student loans, and even though I know I made more living and teaching on a reservation than I would have teaching in Phoenix or Tucson or in another place in Arizona or even in another state, it was still not enough to pay all of the bills that I had, so I did have to take on morning tutoring, after-school tutoring, which you'll be familiar with if you're a teacher. So it got to the point where I was essentially working as a teacher and these other side jobs from 6 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. Even though I was in my 20s still, that was a very exhausting schedule, and I knew that was not going to be something I could sustain for forever. And so I knew that was already on its way out and I had to think of something else. And I also found that one of the bright spots about that even now, aside from the fact that I had these amazing relationships and experiences and working with the kids, is I figured out, oh my gosh, this could be it. I could actually host trips for teachers, and I found myself always talking about travel with teachers, which is actually why I landed on my niche of group trips for teachers, which is so fun because that was just such a natural transition. So any chance I got when I was not teaching, I was talking about travel with teachers. I had discovered all these ways teachers can travel for free, grants, fellowships, scholarships, all that. And I was interested in leading trips for myself, even though I didn't know exactly how that was going to work yet. And that is when I started looking into becoming a travel agent because I realized if I was a travel agent, I could not only go on these trips with them, I could actually get the free spot and I could get paid. Like, what? Getting better and better by the minute. So I started a weekly live show. I started a podcast. I started a blog. I grew a Facebook group of several thousand teachers where I would share information and resources in there. And that is how I actually got into the travel business by happenstance. I had the travel brand at least almost 3 years before I became a travel agent in 2020. We all know what happened in 2020, and that was a very wild year to start, but it really showed me what was possible, especially because by then I had built so many relationships with teachers that when I mentioned that we were going to start doing group trips, it was just such a natural fit. People were signing up for them. The first summer I ran 4 trips, sailing trips through Croatia, and we sold out all of them. In fact, I had only originally meant to do 2, but they filled up so fast, I was like, oh my gosh, we need to fill the others. And I should say that wasn't the first actual year. The first year was supposed to be 2020, but of course I had to cancel. That was a trip to Finland. So bummed about that. So that's why I'm telling you, it's not all about going up and up. It's like up, down, up, down. But if you just keep going, you're still on the trajectory of getting to where you want to be. So hopefully that encourages you too. But I got to the point where now I was building a little bit of an audience. There was a little bit of buzz. There was some consistency in the sense that we were hosting these trips now several weeks in the summer. And then I was like, okay, I want to do more. I don't just want to do more with this business. I actually want to go on more trips myself, where I actually just get to travel for myself, with my sister, with my husband, all that. And I will say juggling the travel business and teaching and all my other side hustles, because I was still doing all this work to make money. So just to give you that schedule again, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. I was working as a teacher, then added on the role of travel agent because I was trying to make money quickly so I could replace some of that addenda work I had taken on as a teacher. I reserved Saturday mornings for travel agent work. And within 3 to 4 months, I was profitable. I was able to scale back on the other work. So by the time I quit teaching, about 2 years later, I had already matched between all of the client work I was doing, and I had also taken on some other projects. I was selling on TPT. So I want to be super clear that I had like multiple side hustles at this point, but I got to the point where I had actually matched my teacher salary, and I had to make a very quick decision in 2022 because I had this certain deadline that if I did not put in my letter of intent to leave, I would not get any of my sick pay, my time off payback. So I was like, I need to get that money right because it's now or never. I need to do this. So that turning point of when I decided to quit was honestly just money. It was like, okay, I've now matched my salary. There were actually some months where I was making more from everything I was doing online versus what I was making as a teacher. There was one month where I'd made like $400 from Teachers Pay Teachers alone. So that was really helpful. I'd had some freelance work, my travel commissions. I think there was one month where the sales, I think, were like $8,000 to $10,000, which is absolutely insane. And just to give you an idea, because it's commissions-based work, we don't get to keep all 10,000 of that. It's, I'll say 20% of that. So even 20% of that, making an extra 2 to 3 grand was like, what? Like, it blew my mind that this was possible. And that was really what I needed to see. Yes, the numbers to make sure it could work financially, but I needed to see that it was possible. That is why I made this video for you, because you're not there yet. So you don't know for sure that it's possible for you. And there's a whole mindset journey that needs to happen for you to see that it's not just possible for anyone, because I know somebody's going to see this or watch this video and think, that's nice for you, Brittany. It's possible for you. But I think you just heard my schedule, right? Like, I didn't really have loads of free time. I was just super committed, honestly, almost desperate, to the point where I was willing to do whatever it took, give up on sleep, sacrifice a bit, so that I could build this business up to the point where I could leave my job. And that's what I did. So what happened after I went full-time? The first summer was amazing, right? My first summer full-time was several weeks in Croatia, which is great. I love Croatia. I keep going back there for a reason. And that was super fun. Really helpful that I had about $30,000 saved up at that time. So even if things weren't going well, I had that cushion. So highly recommend, if you have a way to save money now, that's just a good idea at all costs. And I know that can be really deflating because if you're just barely making it, do you have enough to save? But oh my gosh, if you can save, it's going to lighten the load so much. Definitely try to do that if you can. But I still had this struggle of, okay, I went from basically having 2 incomes, right? I had my income from teaching and my teaching side hustles, to now my travel and other income, but then I lost the teacher income. So now my fun money became my mortgage real money, right? So that was an adjustment I had to make. I decided to become very frugal. I stopped going out as much. I still travel a lot, obviously several times a year, but even when I travel, I'm still very much a budget traveler because my income fluctuates. Many people don't realize, or they're not willing to talk about, that travel is a highly seasonal business, especially for me because I work with teachers. So when are they free? Summer, winter break, spring break, right? That's something that you should know. You should give yourself cushion or enough runway if it is possible for you as you're growing your business to cut down and do part-time at work. because so many people just want to quit and fire their boss and slam the door on their way out. The dramatic exit sounds so fun, but practically you're probably going to have to build up a cushion for yourself so that if you do have some lower months, you're not stressed for money, because it is so unfortunate to stress about money. And I have had some months where I've been like, ooh, we are cutting it really close. And I've also had months where I've had to cut things because that's just how it goes. You have to manage your finances. So advice for anyone wanting to quit their job: if you haven't become a travel agent yet, I highly recommend starting, because if you hem and haw over it, the more time you take, that's more time that you're not making money, right? Because you're just putting that off. There's that saying that goes, the best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I think I say that a lot because I believe it. It's true. I've seen it. So just start, get committed. I actually have an affiliate link and instructions if you do want to become a travel agent. If you become an agent through that link, you get all of my resources and the mentorship for free, including my one-on-one support, and will not let you fail, okay? Find all that information in the description. If you are a travel agent and you're seeing this, still check out the resources because I have other things you might be interested in, but just make sure that you give yourself enough financial cushion, and then also that you manage your mind, because that's so important. Definitely though, know who you are, what you want, and think about what you want out of your travel business and what success is going to look like for you, because nobody else can define it but you. If you haven't already, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and check out the Pack Your Passport podcast if you're not an agent yet. Talk soon.